Watching the Cannabis Broadcasting Group here at cbgtv.com. Opinions of the individuals during this broadcast are their own, and may not be the opinions of their group or other organizations they may be involved with. All medical advice during our broadcast is not a medical opinion and should be checked with your medical physician. This show is a rebroadcast of the Green Crush podcast with Alan Park. Heard on 420radio.ca and seen on cbgtv.com.
Right. That is the problem, I believe, that these drugs are causing outbreaks of psychosis among people who won't get near them. And they are turned into frightened, paranoid order freaks reaching for, extra legal and extra constitutional means to make your life hell. Obviously, their minds have been severely bent by the absence of this drug. However, the knowledge of it seemed to practically undo them.
Next, Terence discusses the potential teachings of DMT.
And
the first
flourishes through the use of chemically complex plants, techniques and traditions for accessing a world invisible to the rest of us, a world of forces and information that is transhuman, supernatural, if the word means anything. But this supernatural dimension is anchored in the plants that live in our world. And my brother was a botanist, and I had botanical training. As we studied the psychoactive plants of the world, especially the New World tropics, where they seem to be concentrated, we were simultaneously exalted by the realization that we had found a doorway, a real doorway into hyperspace, and at the same time tremendously upset and alarmed by the fact that this doorway is in the process of being dismantled by the forces of human ignorance that are not even aware of its existence. So this was the impulse behind the decision on the part of my partner Kat and I that these plants must be saved. They must be preserved in germplasm repositories or botanical gardens or something like that, toward a day when they can be studied and the power, the
Ladies and gentlemen.
You were having a nightmare. What if it's true?
Ladies and gentlemen.
Alan, it's a possibility, isn't it?
The very word secrecy is repugnant.
Secrets.
In a free and open society. And we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweighed the dangers,
constant, extreme danger,
which are cited to justify it. Even today, there is little value in opposing the threat of a closed society by imitating its arbitrary restrictions. Even today, there is little value in ensuring the survival of our nation if our traditions do not survive with it. And there is very grave danger,
extreme danger,
that an announced need for increased security.
This is Conspiracy Queries with Alan Park.
Will be seized upon by those anxious to expand its meaning to the very limits of official censorship and concealment. That I do not intend to permit to the extent that it's in my control.
You're crazy.
And no officious, high or low, civilian or military, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes.
Isn't the Pentagon suspicious that all the buildings blow up?
Or to withhold from the press and the public
I think you're just looking at things for the first time.
the facts they deserve to know.
You've had your whole f***ing life to think things over. What good's a few minutes more gonna do you now?
The facts they deserve to know. They deserve to know. Deserve to know.
Welcome to Green Crush Conspiracy Queries with Alan Park. Thanks for tuning in. We're dragging our way through February. It's really cold and crummy here. But I guess a lot of folks are going to be happy. Tomorrow
Facts they deserve to know.
is Valentine's. So hopefully you'll enjoy a little Valentine's Day something, while I am absolutely not doing the Valentine's Day thing. Not the lovey-dovey thing, and maybe just a massacre part. I'd like to do the massacre part of Valentine's Day. And, of course, when I say that, I mean in regards to the fictions that surround access to one of the most powerful, friendly, easy-to-use, simple-to-understand, basic things that populate our planet. And I'm going to say populate because Terrence McKenna at the beginning of the show was telling us about DMT, and he's also talking about any psychotropic psychedelic in there, including cannabis. So if you're a real McKenna fan and you've heard his 697 hours worth of lectures and available sound bites on the net, you will not get mad at me for deliberately conflating cannabis with DMT. They're completely different substances, but they are both gateway substances. And of course, if you're an FPOF, you're pretty worried about it. What's an FPOF? It's a frightened, paranoid order freak that Terrence discussed in the first part of the show. Frightened, paranoid order freak. These people who are afraid of a substance that brings you to the truth, you can only be carrying off lies if you are concerned about that. So before I get too far down the road, let me tell you who's on our show today to help me bring forth all of this wonderful knowledge. We have another stellar guest, and I'm sure a lot of you know her from beyond the realm of cannabis. So let me just tip this back and we'll get to it. Dr. Michele Ross is going to be on the show. Did you see the way I hung on that doctor? It's really important, doctor, because a lot of people they criticize. You know, they're liable to fall to FPOF, which is the frightened, paranoid order freak, and they are concerned about these substances, and they are already decided in many cases that they're bad for you. Now, I'm gonna give a tip of my hat to Russell Barth. He was on the show Guest 3. It looks like a lot of the things coming towards legalization are coming true, problematically and otherwise. And Russell says he doesn't really want to know anybody. He doesn't want to know anybody. This is Russell from episode 3. Check that out. He talks all through the intro. It's pretty funny. But he says that he doesn't want to know anybody because he's the angriest pothead in Canada. He doesn't want to know anybody that's going to try cannabis simply because it becomes legal in their jurisdiction, whenever that might be, however far the Prime Minister might punt that ball down the road. Russell says, I don't want to know you if the only reason you're trying this is because it's legal. Now, that could sound like a confrontational argument, and it might be, but it's also pretty accurate that if the only thing holding you back from checking this out is a bunch of scribblings written down on a piece of paper that some person wearing a curly wig, maybe if they're in England, or somebody else booted through into becoming what we are supposed to live by, he doesn't have a lot of respect for you. I, on the other hand, will be happy to spend time with people who are just trying it for the first time because it's legal, because that's just too much of a fun conversation to get into, Russell, to just immediately put aside. But I understand Russell doesn't have a lot of time for nonsense, whereas I do. So that's why I'm interested in that particular Ben. But it's nice to have a doctor come on the show and explain to us all kinds of scientific things that, of course, I am unqualified to speak to scientifically, although my anecdotal reports, which many sweep to the side because they're only anecdotal, like the Bible and other books. But it did happen to me. And once it started to happen to me, I realized I am not the only one this is happening to, and crawling out of a deep, dark hole of trying to hide the fact that I was a stage 4 terminal cancer person who was still scrambling in this world to try to get work and didn't want to face any additional stigmas. Some people think cannabis is contagious like the flu, my gosh. So I didn't want to get mixed up with telling the truth, getting into it, mentioning that I was doing these things and taking this substance. And then when I started to talk about it, a lot of people took issue with it, and a lot of friends are standing by, happily understanding that I have managed to pull this off. But boy, there's a lot of detractors out there, and they harp on these anecdotal T-shirt ideas. That's only anecdotal, and what they should be doing is checking it out in case it's happening that they are suffering from a deficiency of cannabis. And although I am not a doctor, I am prepared to diagnose that most people in society are suffering from a very severe lack of vitamin B12. I mean, selenium. I mean, cannabis. It's the same thing, really, ultimately. It is something that you need. And so Dr. Michele Ross is a neurologist, and she is involved with the Impact Network for Women Worldwide. And let me just spell out what impact means. Improving marijuana policy. You could just stop right there. Improving marijuana policy and accelerating cannabinoid therapeutics. So if a lot of those words are new to you, I really can't help you if you don't know what improving means. Marijuana is a pejorative term. Maybe they should change their name to the Impact Network, but that's not going to sound good. So they're going to stick with marijuana. That's okay. They're improving the policy and accelerating cannabinoid therapeutics because it's good for you. It's good for your brain. And, God, I would love to we're still trying to find naysayers, politicians, police officers, what have you, to come on the show and debate and try to debase these anecdotal notions of mine. And we can't seem to do it. They don't want to come in here. Right, Kathleen? Right, Kathleen Windbag? She's the Premier of Ontario. Said she was going to keep a conversation going last November 20th, but my goodness, she does not respond to one of my tweets. She's just telling us how she's spending more money to find out ways to spend money to tell kids that are in school that they'll have money to pay back by the truckload as she front loads their debt load. So she won't come on the show, but Dr. Michele Ross is coming on the show today. She was we had a good little pre-chat on the weekend on I guess it was Sunday or Monday. I don't know. Anyway, she's. Let me get a little bit more what she is all about. She has she talks on the air herself. She interviews people. I think she has a show on Wednesday. We'll talk about that. It's on the Impact Network app. She wants to talk about the power of cannabis to prevent and treat cancer. This is fun to say. People don't listen to this. They don't understand how cool it is that this stuff really works as well as it does. So Michele will be coming in. She's hashtagged it as vitamin weed. Hashtag vitamin weed. So I've already been talking about this for quite some time, that it's a food and that it is a vitamin and that it is a essential nutrient, not something to be locked up behind some blue uniform with a shiny badge. It's a food. So if you don't want cops standing around the produce section of your local grocery store, perhaps you don't want them blocking your access to something that without, your life's not going as well as it should. That said, when the curtain gets peeled back, you see a lot of the nonsense that is going on and preventing a lot of the access, and it's kind of a drag. So you have to balance that out a little bit. But Michele Ross will help us do that. She is also the author of a book, and it looks great to have PhD on the cover. You get to put a comma at the end of your surname, and then you get to put your letters. She's written a book called Vitamin Weed, a 4-step plan to prevent and reverse endocannabinoid deficiency. Or is it endocannabinoid? Maybe she and I will also have that argument. But basically, you've got these receptors in your body. They're waiting for it. And if your mummy was a good girl, she obeyed the law, and she never took any of that her whole life, including when you were in gestation, including when you were developing. So when we have government telling us the lies, and it's so often the opposite, it's funny to me that they're dreaming up a notion that cannabis is this terrible thing, which anything is if you use it incorrectly. Look up water overdosing. Check that out. That's a lot of fun. Don't have too much water, kids. Have the right amount. Use it as a tool. Understand how it works. But also understand how cannabis works. And if you don't know exactly what I'm talking about, and you're not exactly sure, Dr. Michele Ross will help us get to the points. I'm so looking forward to speaking with her. And I'm already looking forward to having her on again. We haven't even started talking yet, so that's pretty cool. Now, who else is Michele Ross? She is also... Now, I hope we get some social media folks paying attention, especially to this show. We better hashtag this thing properly when we distribute it. Michele was on Big Brother. I don't know if you look up Michele Ross online, you'll see that there's probably I'm going to go out on a limb, probably only ever one neurologist as a contestant on Big Brother. Big Brother 11. This was a while ago. It says here in Reality Blurred that she was on that show, and she's a neuroscientist who came in 4th place on Big Brother 11, and that was last summer, so that would have been, I don't know, 2009 maybe? Or was it earlier in 2010? I guess it doesn't matter. And it says here she was going to be on Playboy TV's show called Foursome, and presumably having sex on camera with fellow cast members. Now, I don't know if that's true, and we'll find out when we get to Michele. And the main thing is that she's a neurologist, but she does have a fascinating background. She's not a stodgy, stuck-in-the-mud kind of person, although she does get to carry those letters behind her name, the end. So make sure you take that into account. And before we get going on some of the news roundup, let me just thank, once again, Girth Radio, Eggplant digital media. Here we are, live, coming to you live from 234 King Street East in Toronto, in the downtown East Side. Bringing this to you. It's a great place to come and eat and hang out. And I'm told dance. I don't do that, but I'm told it's good. And just before we actually get to the show, here's a book. I don't have Michelle's book today, but we will get to it. But I really want to plug this one. This is The Great Cannabis Conspiracy by Dr. Samuel Malachi. And unfortunately, though he was a guest on the show, was booked to be a guest in a couple of episodes down the road, was taken ill by a stroke. So we're going to have Paul Hartman come in his stead. But let me just read something from this. Page 1, the prologue, or page V. Have you ever found yourself at a crossroads in life? Have you ever experienced one of those moments when, faced with an ethical dilemma, a mental or physical challenge, a decision whose outcome might change your life, you had to choose which road to take or whether to give up or fight on? They say these are the points in life where you truly discover who you are and what you're made of. It sounds like a cliche, something you'd find etched onto a souvenir mug or a motivational poster. Two roads diverged in a wood. What doesn't kill us makes us stronger. Pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. I say that because it's written in italics. We take comfort and inspiration from the hardships faced and overcome by others. And when we ourselves experience these moments, it feels like we've been to hell and back. We all dance with the devil sometimes, but when we find our inner angel, that's when we know we're on the right path. And then, when you least expect it, the seeds of change unexpectedly sprout in the soil of your accidental life. Hello! This completely explains to me how it was that I was faced with going the traditional route, where they gave me no option, and I would just be a good little boy and take a palliative drug and check on out of here sometime in late 2014, or to make the decision whose outcome might change my life, a mental and physical challenge, to be sure, and a legal one in my case, because I'll never stop telling people that I cooked it up in my own house, in the city where I live, and I don't care who knows it. In fact, I prefer everyone knows it. He says here, that's the most insidious characteristic of pain. I skipped ahead a few pages. The most insidious characteristic of pain, it never lets you forget the moment it was born. It drags you back into the past and forces you to question your life, your decisions. And with each attack, I am transported back in time to those moments of origin where I relive and re-question what happened. Of course, he's talking about a car accident at that point. And eventually comes to the conclusion, fuck this pain, we say, and fuck anyone who tries to express empathy with our pain through a distorted lens of narrow-mindedness, religious belief. Oh, it's immoral. Can I get the kind that doesn't have the THC? I don't want to know anything I'm not supposed to know. Or false science. And fuck any faceless entity of greedy souls that conspires to deny us the true liberty of relief from our pain. Officer and judge and whoever else thinks that they actually have the right to tell folks that can't use a plant to save their life. Oh my God, my center finger is not long enough to hold up. All right, so we're getting closer to Michelle's time. I'm going to get a couple of stories in here first, though I really need to do it. I really got to get it done, so let's have a little shit you need to know music. You'll get to know this shit. Turns out the government hasn't been listening. Pot shops are critical of the provincial plans for legal sales. Oh, so you're just going to back up everything I've already said so far on the show. Okay. From Global News. This week, Victoria, British Columbia, the capital on the island. Hi, Kim. Unveiled its plans for marijuana distribution when recreational use of the drug becomes legal later this year. Or so they say. The new rules raise questions for local governments and have existing Okanagan pot shops concerned about where the province wants them to start sourcing their weed. Bunch of people that never knew how it worked in the first place. Now they're concerned about being on top of it and a sole purveyor. Although it's a lot cooler in BC than here in Ontario, that's for sure. We'll get to that later regarding some of the laws. Vernon dispensary owner Russ Stevenson is not shy about speaking his mind on the province's plans for legal recreational weed sales in BC. And this guy then says, it really looks like the government hasn't been listening, said Stevenson. Oh, they're listening. They're just tacking the other way. That's what you do. You tack the other way, you serve the greater agenda, you're sworn an oath to the Queen, you do the best you can, you take the shots, you do the town halls, you pretend to take in the information from the folks listening, and then you get your pension and run the hell away. It's a good gig. You just have to be a puppet and get rid of your morals. He doesn't like the idea of stores having to buy all their cannabis from the province's liquor distribution branch, with every store having the same products. Victoria's plans for recreational marijuana sales include both government-run and private stores. We don't have that in Ontario, so they're already a leg up, and it still sucks. However, the government's liquor distribution branch will act as the sole wholesaler for private stores. And I'm sure tons of these people in that industry were fighting the cannabis thing, at one point believing it would be a rival to their own income, and now they've figured out a way to rig the game. As Dan Didio, who operates a pot shop on Vernon's Main Street, says, that's absurd that's going to happen. Those people, as of July or August, whenever we get this through, are all unemployed, he said. And what he's talking about are the people where the small growers currently supplying pod shops. You know, the people that know what they're doing and have been doing it for a long time. We're going to get these government keeners in there to try to figure out how to distribute cannabis. So it's a bit of a mess all the way through. Of course, in Canada, we speak about democracy, and it's so fantastic, but we're not going to let the market decide this. This is all a heavy-handed rule that's come down in the first place. Also at Global News, talked about this before, but it's always worth mentioning because nobody believes it. They just can't get their heads around it. Former head of RCMP drug squad now leads national marijuana business. And a hearty fuck you to that guy. It's another sign the legalization is spurring a seismic shift in Canadian society. The former head of the RCMP drug squad now runs a pot company. A man who spent years policing the illegal drug trade is part of a new wave of entrepreneurs poised to cash in when pot becomes legal. And then it says here in this article in July, but then of course Justin says, no, it's not going to be July. I don't know where anybody came up with that. Or words to that effect. A man who spent years policing the illegal drug trade is part of a new wave of entrepreneurs poised to cash in. But Derek Ogden, president of National Access Cannabis, doesn't see his career change as a 180. His policing experience put him in an ideal position to understand the marijuana business. For the past 5 years of his 27-year career with the Mounties, busting people for cannabis, he was in charge of drug enforcement and organized crime for the RCMP all the way across this country. Let's get his fucking ass sitting down over here. I want to grill this MF. Test him for morals like they try to test you for impairment. He's in charge of all that. Now he's going to rake it in while he tells everybody that's currently doing it they're criminals, so get them out of the way so these people can take the money and try to invent new strains that Monsanto will be all over. So we did see a number of groups across the country that were very, very involved in the cannabis industry, and they generated a lot of revenue. Ding, 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 that's what it's all about for these punks. NAC's newest clinic is on the corner of Edmonton's White Avenue and Calgary Trail, where a largely young and urban crowd comes to shop, stroll, and party. The location is high profile, high traffic, and high visibility. Like the government's marijuana regulations, the outlet is still under construction. In the past, the building has been an upscale grocery market. Several bars, and long ago a bank. Pretty funny. Goes from bar, grocery stores, banks. They still have vaults in the basement from the banking days. So this guy's trying to cash in on things, and he's not the only one. Julian Fantino, let's remember, boycott Alethea. Alethea has no business being a business. Now we also have a conservative senator saying that police won't be ready for high drivers by the Canada Day deadline, which once again, Justin has said, there's no deadline there. I don't know why people are saying that, even though it's been written up everywhere. You fool. You people person. Of course, they won't be ready because they haven't been able to figure out how to actually prove that just because you have cannabis in your system that you're high. You could be brand new and have a little tiny bit and be on your face or off your face. And you could be someone else that's got a higher tolerance and take much more than that and you'd be completely sober. But nobody cares about the facts. They just want to make money, revenue, revenue, revenue. Cops selling weed, cops busting other people for buying weed they're not supposed to be buying. It's pretty embarrassing that we let these folks run our lives. But let's get to a couple more quick stories, and then I'm going to bring on Dr. Michele Ross. Now, while I complain and moan and carry on about the negativity coming from this punitive legislation effort, let's go back to an article, and I don't believe it's changed whatsoever. We've had so many of the major purveyors of cannabis in the country that are sanctioned by the government to provide these licensed purveyors have tainted product issues. Organogram being the worst, because why call your product organic if you've even got any kind of pesticides in the house, folks? More lying, I guess. But when we get to this article, this is great. The Globe and Mail. No pesticide testing done for medical marijuana, Health Canada says. And these are the people setting policy. Yeah, listen to this. Health Canada, which is facing a growing controversy over tainted medical marijuana, cannot say with certainty how widespread the use of banned pesticides is within the industry. I'll tell you how many pesticides they're using where I get mine. None. Of course, mine isn't a licensed, sanctioned, official, legal, safe place to obtain it. But once again, fuck them. Instead, the regulator has been leaving it up to the growers to police themselves on the use of the potentially harmful chemicals. In a background briefing with the Globe and Mail, a senior Health Canada official acknowledged that even though the government prohibits the use of potentially harmful chemicals such as myclobutanil, which is known to emit hydrogen cyanide when heated, the government has not been testing cannabis growers to ensure the 38 federally licensed companies were in fact not using it. Up until this point, and this is from last year, we've not required licensed producers to test for any unauthorized pesticides, nor have we been testing all of the licensed producers, and it is because we expect their companies to be proactively watching and taking the appropriate measures to ensure non-authorized products aren't used. When has that ever happened? When does that ever happen? Do we let Wall Street monitor Wall Street in case any... Oh, yeah, we do actually do that. Sorry, okay. Do we let the police investigate themselves whenever there's some kind of horrible... Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, we do actually do that. All right. So that now we know that continues now. We understand that this is the case, that these people, by and large... telling people who have been providing good quality weed for decades that they are criminals while these punks legalize and enforce purveyors of tainted weed without even bothering to check. I'm just about ready to toss up at my lunch. And if you're listening to this show and you think you're having lunch right now, maybe what you ought to do is give that up. Because Michele Ross, neurologist, doctor, author, is coming on the show now, and she might say something that will put you off your meal. Now, I've always said on the show that we need to make sure you're not enjoying a nice dinner or meal or something while you listen. Sometimes it gets a little gross. So, here we go with calling up Dr. Michele Ross. Skype. And hopefully there she is.
Hello there, Alan.
The good doctor. How are you today?
Oh, wonderful. I'm so excited to speak on Green Crush.
Oh, me too. I'm so excited to have you here. The whole team is happy to have you on. I want to do a quick throw out nod to my producer, Danny Mendlow, and my producer, Kim Sakamoto. We are three, but we are spread apart, but we are putting this thing together. So thank them for finding you. I did not find you. They found you.
Oh,
And
well, thank you both.
yeah, we're all the same team. It's the same effort. So Dr. Michele Ross, do you go by that all the time when you go out? Do you say, I am Dr. Michele Ross, or do you just say it's Mish, or what do you do?
Well, it's sort of funny because outside the academic world, right, we don't really call each other doctor, but in the cannabis world, it really is important to emphasize doctor because there is so many experts out there without any credentials, talking about the science or presenting themselves as experts, and then you actually find out that their degree is in Google search, and so there is a difference, a big one. Yeah.
That's where my degree came from, and I don't call it a degree, but that's how I crawled out of the muck. That's how I got out of the muck. But I understand it's not really official, so
Yeah,
good for
but
you.
you don't have to call me Dr. Ross if you don't want to. Michelle is fine as well.
Okay, Michele. Well, I'm going to call you Dr. Ross because you are a doctor, and all of the reasons that you mentioned as to why you refer to yourself as one in this field are definitely on tap for the show. So I'm going to stick with Dr. Ross. Okay.
Okay.
When did you become a doctor?
So I got my PhD in neuroscience from the University of Texas, Southwestern Medical Center. And by the way, that's way harder to say than most schools. But I got that degree at the end of 2008. So I've been a doctor since then, about almost 10 years.
You were a doctor for 10 years. And so during the time of becoming a doctor, what came over you to become a contestant on CBS's Big Brother, an Endemol production?
Well, I actually finished my degree in 2008, and I wasn't on Big Brother until 2009. So I was actually in a different position. I had moved to California. I was working at Caltech, and a couple of things had happened in my life. My brother had actually passed away from an oxycontin and alcohol overdose. I was going through some relationship troubles, and I was pretty sure my marriage was ending. So I decided to just apply to a random Craigslist ad. It wasn't actually a Big Brother call or anything. It was looking for scientists for TV, and I was in California. So I'm like, yeah, I sort of hate my job. I hate my marriage. Like, I don't know what I want to do with my life. Sure, I'll just apply to a game show or something. And it turned out to be Big Brother. I literally, when I found out, when I called them, I like dropped my phone and everything because I had been a huge fan. Since I was a little kid. I had seen every season, and it was the only reality TV show I watched. And so I was really shocked. I thought it was going to be like a joke thing on Craigslist, and it turned out to be Big Brother. So that's how I ended up on the show.
Amazing. Okay, so you were a doctor at that time, and you're just taking
Yes.
that knowledge inside, and they played on that, right? The show itself accentuated the fact that you were a doctor.
A little bit, it was actually funny. So when you talk to producers before you go into the show, right, they always ask you what's your strategy and this and that. And then the production sort of screwed with my strategy because I told them that I was going to hide the fact that I was so smart because, smart people on that show win the show. For example, Dr. Will. Won season 2 of the American Big Brother. And I didn't want people to think that I was a scientist and I was going to be able to manipulate everyone because I was so smart. So I told people I was, like a lowly dishwasher in the show. And of course they put the theme that season was brains, jocks, like other types of high school cliques. And I was immediately put on the brains team. And here I was telling everyone I was an idiot. So that didn't really work out well for me. So I was targeted, at first for being a liar, sort of. So
Right.
that wasn't very fun.
But you lasted many weeks.
Yeah, so I lasted almost all the way to the end. I was 4th place. I was 66 days on the show, which actually surprised the hell out of me. I didn't realize I was as strong as I was. I was actually a pretty fierce competitor in the physical challenges, and I barely worked out in the gym ever, so I was a little surprised at that.
Yeah.
And And I didn't have the best social game. I'll acknowledge that. You don't expect scientists really to have good social games, anyways. I would do things a little bit differently if I had been in the house a second time. But I was really proud of how long I lasted, and there was a couple things that obviously that stopped me from winning the game, and you can always look at that in retrospect and go, oh, I should have done this or that. You just get worn down in that game. I actually have one of the records for not eating the longest in the Big Brother house. I was actually on a restricted slop diet for 4 weeks. I lost like 20 pounds.
Why was that? What's that got to do with it?
Well, okay, so when you're not allowed to eat, and you have to eat the same like porridge thing that's like really just nutritionally messed up, your brain gets really dull.
That's what they gave you to eat on the show? Porridge?
Yeah, so I had either my team lost competitions, or I had been penalized. So I actually hold the record for not eating. And so yeah, it's so I like towards the end of the game I was just so tired and like exhausted that I couldn't even think anymore. Like my edge was being smart, and like I couldn't think anymore. And so people were like, she's forgetful and everything else like that. I'm like, no, like you have no idea what it's like to eat the same meal every single day. Yeah,
everybody was doing that? Everybody was on the same page with that kind of thing?
No. So it was just me. I kept getting targeted.
Oh, so this was some kind of specific punishment or challenge you had to go through alone while everybody else was eating properly?
Yeah. So everyone, like, there are some people that go on the show and they never get that, and then there's some people that only get a week of that. I managed to, be on that diet for like 1 week, then off of it, then on it, and it was a total of 4 weeks. So
4 weeks.
Yeah.
I remember.
A little bit of torture.
I remember when a long time ago when I first started watching the show, and so they had a cast of folks in there, and then 9/11 happened, and they were all in there, and they didn't know what was going on. Like that really blew my mind, because something so life changing and world changing means. Yeah. Meanwhile, you're cooped up inside some secret television show thing. It just seemed particularly strange to me that would be the case, that you'd be stuck in there. So anyway, that's cool. So you were, and then there was a bit of notoriety, and I just want to touch on this before we move into the heavier kind of science aspect of the show. Stuff I read about you was that you were, and I'm quoting here, so a bisexual. And we're going to have lesbian sex or something like this on Playboy television?
No.
That's what I read. Better check.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff on the internet that is not true. I would say almost like fantasy stories. I mean, I get a lot of times from people, even from groups that I've done consulting for, and they're like, I read something online that says you're a porn star, and I'm like, what are you talking about?
Right.
To acknowledge it, I did do a Playboy TV show back in the day. It was a celebrity version, so it was very, very well paid. In retrospect, I had no idea it would get the kind of media coverage it did. There was a lot of different people from different shows. For example, like Ozzy from Survivor did that show.
Yeah.
And the men that did that show, no one really cared. And then the fact that I was a scientist and I had done that show, which wasn't, for example, like porn. It was, a reality competition show with nudity. So, there's some aspects there that I didn't quite expect, being a little bit naive, the backlash about it. But this is my brand. I am a sex, drugs, and rock and roll scientist. I support cannabis. I support decriminalization of all drugs. I support, expression of female sexuality. So, I don't regret the experience. I quite enjoyed it. I thought it was very interesting. And definitely, from a scientist point of view, it's very interesting to see, different types of sexuality expressed, and also in a game show. It was just very interesting, from an observational point of view. So,
yeah.
I've done a lot of different things in my lifetime, and I'm definitely, not the typical scientist, but that's what makes me me.
Well, that's great. I'm glad you're you, and I'm glad you've written a book. So let's turn things a little bit closer to the present. So
Yes.
you wrote a book.
That was a long time ago.
Yeah, that's like almost 10 years ago we're talking, etc. So, I just wanted to get that out of the way. And to be honest with you, quickly, the reason I wanted to get it out of the way was because, like you say, being a doctor lends a certain amount of credence to what you're talking about, obviously, as in this cannabis field, etc., where people are sort of pre-wired to take it apart as dangerous and fantasy, and there's no evidence of this, and so I wanted to put this out here, your sort of more colorful background, because if you can believe it or not, listeners I'm speaking to more than Dr. Ross, who I'm sure already knows this, that could be used as a sort of a hammer, a cudgel against your credibility, because you choose to have fun, and because you're not what the typical generic, stereotypical understanding of what a scientist is. And somehow that can be used at times as making you less credible. Sometimes you get a show out of it, like Bill Nye. But in your case, I just wanted to make sure that, you're not hiding anything. You're just a person with a colorful past, and obviously intelligent, as you say, and you've learned a lot of things beyond Google University. And so anybody that wants to take a swing at Dr. Michele Ross, go ahead and do that. It's, it's got really nothing to do with the facts on the table. So I'm always trying to tell people that it doesn't matter, how long my hair is, or what kind of television shows you were, forced to eat porridge on. It doesn't change your awareness and acumen. So let's just dive right into the book right now, and let's talk about your book that explains about a deficiency in the endocannabinoid system. So tell us where your research began for that book, and how long it took you to write it, and some of the big take-home points that people want to find out when they read this thing.
Sure. So I had always been interested in the endocannabinoid system. My very first paper, actually, in graduate school was on cannabinoids and neurogenesis, which is the birth of new brain cells. In an area of the brain called the hippocampus. It's important for learning and memory and in drug addiction. And the rest of my PhD, I ended up studying other drugs of abuse like cocaine and meth and heroin, just because, the government doesn't really support research on cannabis growing brain cells, and they're not really interested in that. So, being a scientist and not really being taught about the endocannabinoid system, having to learn about it a lot myself, and being, doing a little bit of the Google search PhD, it was sort of interesting. I had never lived in a state where cannabis was legal. And then when I did my postdoc, I moved to California, and I was able to see firsthand what legalization was like, and all these people using cannabis. And it was very interesting. And I actually didn't use it myself until my late 20s when I had some health issues. And so it really, being able to use it on myself and really experience it, not just reading about it in science, not just seeing other, patients, like really experiencing it myself, and blowing my mind about the fact that cannabis was able to do things that traditional medicine couldn't. Like, I had nerve damage. Like, I had an arm that didn't work. Like, two of the nerves in my arm just sort of got really inflamed, and my wrist and my hand just stopped working for 2 months.
Let me just stop you there. So, is that a muscular thing, or did you tap into?
It was a nerve. It was a nerve thing. So I have inflammation, and I still do. I have basically an inflammatory condition where if I don't use cannabis, the nerves in both my arms and legs get really inflamed, and I can't really walk or use them. So it's been the only thing that's ever helped. So for me, I was personally inspired to continue doing research. And then in 2012, I met my husband, Todd, and together we formed a nonprofit called the Endocannabinoid Deficiency Foundation. It's not called that anymore. We call that Impact Network, just because you can't get banking when you talk about cannabis in your company name.
Right.
But I started working on this book back in 2013. And it was really based on the fact that I had worked before as a chief scientist formulating not cannabis, sorry. nutraceuticals. And so, like vitamins, herbal supplements, those kind of things. And just thinking about it, I was like, you know what? Like, there are cannabinoids that could be dietary supplements. Like, can we sell those legally? And then, the answer was like, no, not really. Like, unless we all want to go to jail, like we can't be shipping that across the world. And, little did I know about all those laws on Schedule 1 drugs back then. And so I started looking into it and really thinking that cannabis was a vitamin. And there's a lot of different applications. We know a lot of applications of cannabis as a treatment, but as a preventative supplement that we should be taking every day. That concept wasn't really out there. And so
no, especially not from a government that doesn't like to promote new ways of growing brain cells.
Yeah. Schedule 1 drugs are supposed to be, highly addictive and have no medical benefit. And so we're still denying the fact that it has a medical benefit for cancer, for epilepsy, for so many different things, it definitely can't prevent cancer. I mean, that's ridiculous, according to them, right?
Yeah. Well, tell us tell us a little bit about, you touched on nutraceuticals, and I think I know what those are, but so based on my very sketchy knowledge of what that is, then you focused on cannaceuticals. So can you tell us about those?
Yeah, so nutraceutical, I mean, is anything like you take like a vitamin. Like vitamin C is considered a nutraceutical, right?
Okay.
So anything that's OTC, that's not available like by prescription. So you have nutraceuticals, and then you have pharmaceuticals, and then you have recreational drugs. And so it's interesting because I actually think that cannabis should be in all 3 classes, right? You can dab or smoke, cannabis, and you're not really using it for medical purposes. That's recreational, sort of similar to taking, drinking alcohol. Then you have pharmaceutical cannabis, which is, in several countries, including Canada, you have THC that's available by prescription. And I think in Canada, it's called Nabilone.
Right.
In America, it's called Marinol.
Oh, that's the same thing, is it? Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
And then some other countries have some other products on the market. Those are like GW Pharmaceuticals. And then you have what I think is really like the nutraceutical version, which is, right now what we see in dispensaries, like medical marijuana really should be nutraceutical because we're not doing clinical trials on it so much. You're able to go there and, without a prescription, be able to purchase it yourself. So it really is on the nutraceutical level. It's like you have to go to a dispensary to buy it, but it's the same as like you go to, the supermarket and you pick up some vitamin C for yourself.
Right. Okay. And so cannaceuticals, these are the same things, but all made from the extracts of cannabis, I guess. They're different.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's 2 forms. You can get cannabinoids from the hemp plant, and then you can get it from cannabis. It's basically the same plant. It's just a classification based on the percentage of THC that's available in the plant.
Okay.
Right. And to be clear, too, because there's so much confusing language about cannabis. I mean, the cannabis plant does not make THC. It makes THCA, and then you have to heat it up. Like you have to burn your cannabis to turn it into THC.
Exactly. So this Impact Network, how is that going for you? Is this a goal you've established and it's moving in the right direction and getting the right results?
Yeah. So, I mean, of course, it's always challenging to have a nonprofit that's trying to do education and advocacy and research in the United States when we're not very funded at all for research on the medical benefits of cannabis. But I founded the foundation, and we've done a lot of amazing things. For example, we were the first group to hold cannabis for specific medical condition conferences. In 2015 and 2016, we held a conference every month. We did the first conference pretty much like in the world for cannabis and women's health. We had one on cannabis and cancer, cannabis and pets, where people brought their pets in. It was actually really fun.
Oh, that would be good, yeah.
Yeah, and then we've done a lot of community outreach. We've launched the first app for women who use medical cannabis, and that is available at community.impactcannabis.org.
Say that again. That just sort of dropped out a little bit. Just slow down and say that again so people can...
No problem. I talk really fast.
That's okay.
I'm from Jersey.
That's fine.
So we launched at the end of December the first mobile app and private community for women who use medical cannabis. And you can be on that app, whether you're in the United States, whether you're in Canada, Australia, anywhere in the world. And the point of it is to provide peer mentoring for women. And so to match people up that are new to cannabis with, say, a specific condition. Like, for example, you just got diagnosed with breast cancer. You don't know who to talk to. You don't know what doctors to go to, what products to use. And we want to connect you with people that are local to your province, state, city, et cetera, and that can really guide you in a very private manner. We don't think that Facebook is the correct place for medical advice. And a lot of times what we've seen in these groups is that there's a lot of incorrect medical advice out there. So community.impactcannabis.org is where you can find our app and connect with other women. And if you are a woman who's listening to this podcast and you are really, experienced, you want to be a mentor, we would love you to join too. So you can share your experience.
Are you familiar with Cheryl Schumann?
Yes, I know Cheryl.
Okay, good. We were trying to get her on the show a while ago, and she was unable to, at the last minute, had a doctor's appointment, so I hope she's okay. But she seems like a bit of a powerhouse.
Yeah. She's from Los Angeles. I used to live out there for about 5 years, so I know her.
Yeah, that's good. So she's got some money, and she's a woman. So maybe you want to hit her up for some turning this thing around. So when you're writing a book called Vitamin Weed, what do you have to tell the publishers to make sure they go along with your plan?
So this is actually self-published. So when I first started the book, I did actually have a book agent in New York, and they said that they would help me publish any book besides a cannabis book because no one would buy a cannabis book. And this was back, like in 2013, which I think is freaking hilarious now when you see how many cannabis books there are. But my very first book was actually on the neuroscience of weight loss. And so that was sort of the category I was in, was neuroscience books. And then I was like, I want to make a Weed Saves the World book. And that was not looked very positively on, and I got dropped by my agent. So, and then, taking the time that it did, just because I did have health issues and everything, and then also a legal battle, in Los Angeles. It took a while to put out the book. So I decided to self-publish it, so it would get out, in an orderly time. And there are actually a lot of self-published books out there. So, it is coming out in February, 23rd. So, right around the corner.
Right around the corner, so it's good timing for us to have you on. Look for that Vitamin Weed, because it is a nutritional supplement. I'm so happy to have found you, and it's the team that found you, because I've been saying this for a while, and through things that I'd researched and through, just as Terrence McKenna spoke about on the beginning of the show, it opens some doors. It opens, it accesses certain areas of the brain. Or I'm not even articulating this properly, but what I'm saying is that without ingesting this substance on the regular basis that I was doing that, and for the reasons I was doing that, that is how I was able to find and discern, I don't want to use the phrase out of the box, but out of the box, going down different avenues of awareness. And it led to me going, this is a food. This is a substance this is as ridiculous as if some idiots got a notion back in the 30s that eating oranges and grapefruits and lemons was a bad idea. They had some kind of beef against citrus because it's an artificial stimulant or something. And so since for the last 80 years, we don't have vitamin C, or it's illegal to buy orange juice or grapefruit juice, etc. Yep. And we already know that the chemo folks don't like you taking grapefruit juice when you're on chemotherapy. So it just seems as nuts to me as banning any nutritive substance. I mean, I'm so thrilled to have come across someone else that's actually, got the chops and the science behind them to write a book about it. So I'm so thrilled to know you. And I'm looking forward to getting to read this book as well.
Oh, I'll be sending you a signed copy for sure.
Oh, fantastic. That's so good. And we'll have you back on later, and we'll see how things are doing. But I'd like to ask you a couple of just point blank questions here. What do you tell a person who says, because I have my answers that I would offer, but I want to hear what you have to say. What do you tell a person who says, oh, yeah, I've got this terrible medical situation going on, and some people have recommended cannabis. Is there any way I can just get the CBDs? Is there any way I can avoid the THC? What do you tell people that say that?
It's of course a person's, personal decision about what they consume, and not everyone feels comfortable with the psychoactivity of THC. But there are ways to mediate that, and people are scared of being out of control. But when you look at it, like you have morphine, you have melatonin, you have all these different compounds that people take, and they do make people feel out of it.
Yeah.
So THC is similar, and so for people that are uncomfortable with THC, you can start them at a ratio, and a ratio is the amount of THC to CBD you're using. So you could have, say, a really high ratio of THC, like a 5-to-1 THC to CBD ratio. That will make a person feel high. You want to start a patient that is really scared of, say, the psychoactivity at a much lower dosage. You might even want to start them with, say, 4 times as much CBD as THC in there, and then keep adding the THC levels up until they feel comfortable. And I mean, the more you take THC, the more you're going to become tolerant to it.
Right.
I will say, as a first-time, patient myself, it took me about 3 weeks to become comfortable with THC. Like, no matter what I would do, I would either go to sleep like instantly,
Yeah.
or I would feel really paranoid or just feel out of it. And you have to be reminded that when you take, say, antidepressants, for example, it can take up to 3 weeks for your brain to adjust to them.
Yeah.
It's modulating your serotonin levels, and THC is, working on your cannabinoid receptors and altering levels of all your different neurotransmitters. So, if you're not used to using cannabis, it could take a little bit for you to get adjusted. And even when you are trying to personalize that perfect dose for yourself, whether it's an edible or smokable form or whatever it is, give yourself time to adjust. If there's something that you don't like about how you're feeling, try it for 1 week. And if it's still not good, then adjust the dose, or change the strain, or change the product. But don't try it once and be like, that wasn't for me. And we have a lot of patients that do that. They're like, oh, I want to use this for, say, my autoimmune disorder. And they tried cannabis once and they had a horrible experience and they'll never use it again. And you're like, you got to stick with it and work with somebody that knows what they're doing to help you.
Okay, so why? Okay, let's say we've figured out a way to, and if you look at the Rick Simpson oil dosage chart and just Google that, you'll find a very easy, the best way I've found to come up on it slowly so that the psychoactivity doesn't throw you off.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now
you know what? I will say this. I actually use Rick Simpson oil to get myself out of a wheelchair. So it's interesting because some people don't ever develop the tolerance to that,
Right.
and we don't really understand why. It's possible because some people just have different enzymes, or different activity of the enzymes that break down THC into, say, more active metabolites. And so there's, for some people, like they never get tolerant, and so that's okay. But we do have to realize that there are other ways to mediate that. Like, there are supplements you can take to try to bring down the high, or things like that. Or just be aware that, when you take this at night, for example, so you're not sleepy or groggy during the day.
Yeah, I just find it amazing that so many of the people that are concerned about it and they don't want to do it, and they try it for a week and they say, no. These are people that quite often, similarly, would take however long the doctor says you need to take for chemotherapy while they're going bald and throwing up. And they seem to hang in with that plan okay. But as soon as you get an access to another imagination portal, it's a bit of a problem. I think when you're at life and death, it's a good idea to take a look at this. So let me just get back to this. So when you're talking about THC ingestion, and you're saying to build it up slowly, and eventually, some people can't do it. But if you're on track and you're taking it in and you're improving, what exactly is going on with the THC that's helping you? Like, why take it in the first place? What does it do?
Sure. Well, we know that cannabis can help so many different conditions. And that's, of course, why some people don't believe it and think it's snake oil, because how could one medication treat everything from ADHD and autism to seizures to cancer? It's doing different things in different patients. Obviously, THC activates your CB1 and CB2 receptors. And in terms of cancer treatment, which is one of the things people take Rick Simpson or fecal oil for, the THC is very potent at killing cancer. So it kills the cancer cells through a process called apoptosis, which is really,
Apoptosis.
yes. So that's really important because a lot of times chemotherapy or radiation will cause necrosis, and necrosis is a messy death. And so your cancer cells will die, but they'll basically like burst, and it causes all this inflammation, and it's really harmful to your other cells. And so what you want to do is use cannabis to sort of target those cancer cells, like eliminate them, like stealth, like I don't know, like CIA style, you
Right.
know, and you want to clear them out of your body without causing damage to the rest of your body. And unfortunately, we know that, you know, when you go through traditional cancer treatment, you're sick because those treatments have messed up your other cells in your body. And so the other ways that THC can help reduce cancer, you can stop the formation of blood vessels, which is really important when blood is coming to cancer or to a tumor. You know, it's feeding it, it's helping it grow. So if you cut off the blood supply, you can kill the cancer. And you can also stop cancer from spreading, right? That's the big issue where, you know, when somebody has cancer and then it goes to their other parts of their body, and it's really, really hard to beat then. So anything that we can do to shrink tumors and stop them from spreading is the best way. And then also too, I want to mention CBD, because CBD is really cool in the fact that it also turns off cancer genes, and we don't talk a lot about that. That, you know, you have so many genes that can either stop cancer or can help promote it, and CBD is just really powerful in the fact that it just shuts it all down. It shuts all those programs down. So really, there are some people
tell us again.
that fight THC.
CBDs are shutting down what programs?
Yeah. So basically, you have several genes that can either promote cancer cell growth, or they can stop them. And so CBD actually works on a specific gene called ID1, and it downregulates that. And so that's important for making sure that the tumors don't spread and grow.
Okay. So that is super important. So what is the fixation with so many people? Oh, can I just use CBD? Like, it seems half-assed, literally.
You know, yeah, and I have to agree with you. You know, unfortunately, there isn't any clinical research published specifically on fecal or ricin oil, and that's because of the restrictions around research in both Canada and the U.S. And I don't think RSO is as used as much in other countries where they're doing research, like Israel. But it's really important for us to understand, you know, what it takes to kill cancer cells. And for a lot of people, you know, there's some people being told out there that, you know, like, take 5 milligrams of a CBD tincture and you'll kill your cancer. And it's not going to happen at that dosage. There are times where CBD is more appropriate than THC for some types of estrogen positive breast cancers. But for the most part, you need a ton of THC to kill the cancer.
Yeah.
And just telling people, you know, here's a couple drops of something, or take this like lollipop, like, you hear the worst things, and it's really depressing sometimes when you work with patients that have been given bad advice. We really do think that in most cases you do need a combination of THC, a lot of THC, but also some CBD can help, again, shutting down those genes that promote cancer, and letting the THC, you know, actually activate and kill those cancer cells is really important. So both of them do their job. And then there's other cannabinoids too that we haven't discussed, and, you know, there's very little research for, or, you know, there's not as much applications and treatment protocols, but we're learning about CBC. We're learning about THCA and CBDA, which CBDA is the raw version of CBD.
And is it also converted through heat? CBDA to CBD?
Yes.
So
So you can decarboxylate it. So CBDA is what's made in the plant.
Okay.
And so you can decarb it through a bunch of different ways, but raw hemp juice, for example, would have CBDA in it. And CBDA is actually a COX-2 inhibitor, and so it actually in clinical trials.
What kind of inhibitor? Sorry, I missed that. What kind of inhibitor?
I know. Yeah, sorry. Here I go again with the.
I didn't go to your school, okay? I wasn't sitting behind you in class looking over your shoulder. Yeah.
No, it's okay. So
Tell us again.
Yeah, so COX-2, COX-2.
COX-2.
So basically, when you take anti-inflammatory drugs, they inhibit two things. They inhibit COX-1, and they inhibit COX-2. And most like OTC drugs, like an Advil or something, they mostly inhibit COX-1. They're not very good at inhibiting COX-2. And what these COX-1 and COX-2 do is that they promote inflammation in your body. They also promote cancer growth and things like that. So if you can inhibit them, you inhibit cancer. And so raw hemp juice, or raw cannabis juice it comes from a strain that also has CBD in it. You're not going to get CBD obviously in a strain that has no CBD in it. But if you're looking at like an ACDC or Canatonic or whatever is available in Canada, if you use the juice from or you use a tincture that has decarboxylated cannabis in it, you're going to get the CBDA, and that's really important because the CBDA is what I tout as both the preventative and the treatment for cancer. So CBDA is very selective at inhibiting the COX-2, so it'll inhibit inflammation, it'll inhibit the spread of cancer. And we've actually no one's ever done clinical trials on, say, CBDA for cancer, but COX-2 inhibitors have been tested in clinical trials to prevent and treat prostate cancer, breast cancer, colon cancer. So we know that's the mechanism for killing cancer. So if CBDA is the same exact drug, but less harmful because it doesn't really have the side effect profiles of a lot of the synthetic drugs, we have a really powerful way to treat and prevent cancer. And in fact, I think that if people actually took, say, CBD or a combination of CBD plus raw CBDA,
just take it all in. CBD, CBDA, THC, THCA, just all the terpenes.
Take it all,
yeah.
Yes. I'm a big fan of not isolates, taking obviously the full spectrum products.
Right. Okay. So what's your take on the word? It's a scientific word, so if you're just new to the show, we do throw these around sometimes. What's your take on the word cure?
Cure. So cure is a great word to get donations and funding and, catch attention. But it's also sometimes a very dangerous word because, government agencies don't want you to make claims, and saying something cures something is a good way to get your company shut down or website shut down. But it's it's a 4-letter word. So it's a really easy thing to throw up on slides or, put up on an ad. Cannabis cures cancer is obviously the biggest one out there. That's the most controversial. And you'll have a lot of cancer doctors out there, including Donald Abrams, that goes, sorry, cannabis does not cure cancer. But the thing is, obviously there's just no cure for almost anything, that's out there. But as a treatment, the proper word is treatment. Right? Because we have patients that have been treated with cannabis and their cancer has gone in remission. But we know that every single human in existence has cancer cells in them. So no one is ever really cured of cancer. We can reduce it to the point where it's undetectable, but no one is ever cured. Unfortunately, being a human means you have mutated cancer cells in you. So cure is a hard one, but it's as good as it can get. Like how we see for example, with HIV patients where they're on antivirals right now, where they have basically undetectable HIV, are they cured? We don't say that they're cured, but it's pretty much like you're cured. And so in the same way, we can use cannabis to pretty much wipe out some kind of conditions, but saying cure is a dangerous thing.
Okay, well, give your opinion then as a doctor, because that's why you're on the show. Give your opinion then to, this is what I came up with, because with my own research, I started to realize how dangerous the word cure was and how it's a magnet, not only for people that want to get out of trouble, but for people who want to attack you for saying you can get out of trouble or grow new brain cells. So what I came up with was this very much non-doctor, non-PhD explanation, because I got tired of hearing people say to me, so is it cured though? Is it gone? Because they're looking for this wedge issue to separate me from the notion that it worked. And all I can provide is a guaranteed funeral date of 2014 Christmas time or sometime earlier than that, and a horrible slide on out the last several months. And now I sit here feeling none of the issues that were bringing me to the wall. So I wanted to say, yes, I'm cured, it's gone, the blood levels keep showing that it's not there. I do the staging tests. I've got some coming up next week. I keep learning about it, and they're not finding it in me and they won't take away the stage 4 designation, even though they can't seem to find it. But what I tell people and what I've been telling them is this, and so if I'm wrong, please correct me, and I'll apologize to everyone I've said this to. Here's what I say. In that it is a food deficiency of sorts, you're taking the oil or the FICO, is that what you call it?
FICO.
FICO oil,
Yep.
right. And you're taking this intense oil, and it is the same way crack is to cocaine and as cocaine is to the coca leaf, and you're intensifying the process to make up for the fact that for so much of your life you haven't had this nutrient. So now you've taken it in a powerful sense, instead of just taking it gradually and through mommy's breast milk and in your salads and smoothies and juices all through your life. And you're powerfully, like nuclear blasting yourself back into what I call a state of being where the disease cannot get purchase. It cannot take a foothold into you. So thereby I get to not use the word cure, but I also get to imply that I'm not suffering from having this disease. Is that okay? Does that make sense, or where do I have to fix that?
Yeah, and the terms I love to use, especially, these are things from the cancer community, and I've attended quite a few cancer conferences, and the term really is surviving and thriving, and so that's like what I love to say. Not even with cancer, but with any chronic disease, right? We see people that have used cannabis now, and they're like, okay, I got my symptoms down, but now they're like doing things that they didn't even do before they got diagnosed, like to go from I'm a sick person and this is my life to okay, I have managed my symptoms and now I'm running around. Now I'm an athlete. Now I lost 60 pounds. Now I'm an artist. Now I have all this time to do things that I used to not be able to do because I was a sick person that took up 24/7 of my time, managing my disease. Like, let's not worry about disease management. Like, let's survive your disease and live the best life you can. And I think that's what cannabis can give. I cannot find any person who's doped up on pharmaceuticals that is living their best life. Like, no one. I'm sorry, no one.
Well, the sales reps are doing okay.
Yeah.
Of those diseases. Once again, this show is brought to you by the government. The government doesn't like to promote new brain cell growth. Thanks for that. That's going to go in our overarching lexicon of terms. Okay, so it makes sense that I'm rendering my body inhospitable to the disease. Does that make sense? Can I say that instead of curing it?
Yeah, and I mean, you're creating an environment that cannot grow cancer, and then that's perfect.
Perfect. Okay, good. So wow, this is great. I didn't even have to write a book to figure all this out. You had to do all the heavy lifting. I just had to almost die to figure out almost the same things. So I'm asking you this now. I want to get into some quick shot questions. We're running out of time with you soon, and I want to find out some things. All right, Dr. Michele Ross. Someone comes in your office and says, "Oh my God, I've been diagnosed as a stage 3 ovarian cancer, and they are telling me that they want to start me up on chemotherapy in like 10 or 15 days. What do you tell that person right there in the moment?
I don't dispense medical advice over the radio.
This
so
is the
everything
internet.
is
It's okay.
yeah, or the internet. You have to be very careful. So when we talk to patients, we review what medications they're on, any tests that they have available for us. So, there's no one size fits all. We let them know what the risks are of them taking, say, going completely just to cannabis. Also, what the other options are, including using cannabis just for palliative care, which is managing, nausea, side effects of chemotherapy, et cetera, because some doctors, are not happy when their patients take cannabis.
Tell me about it.
And yeah, so it's a really difficult thing. And so, there are cases where, because of people's, hospital affiliations, right? There's some hospitals that will not treat you if you're using cannabis, or, the doctors are outside of the system. There's all sorts of issues. And so, if you have a cannabis-friendly doctor, it makes it a lot easier. And that's one of the things that Impact Network does. We try to find providers that are okay with their patients using cannabis, and they don't necessarily have to be knowledgeable about it. They just have to not be hostile about it or judgmental or reporting or things like that. But there are so many complicated things that come into it. But there are definitely options, for women that are using suppositories, obviously, for cancer. That can be very, very helpful because that's very local application of THC and CBD as well.
I'm sitting on one right now.
Yes. I mean, it's for like that's if you're not talking suppositories, whether they're rectal or vaginal for cancer, I mean, like your provider is missing the point.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, absolutely.
They are amazing, and it's of course taboo, but I'm sorry, the discomfort or really like there is no discomfort really in using suppositories. I use them for my conditions. It's much better than being hooked up for chemo.
Well, there
for
is a bit of
example.
a drawback. Let me just share with you
Okay.
what can happen if you don't get the right suppositories, or you make them yourself out of an experimental nature and guilty as charged. You can use too much coconut oil, and then you're going about the business of your day, and all of a sudden, you're starting to leak, and you should have a Kleenex handy. So that's my big safety warning. If you're going to use suppositories, have a Kleenex at the ready. Don't wind up like me in the H&M change room at the February clearance center. That was a nice shirt, and unfortunately, I had to leave it there. But it is interesting that you are all over the map, as they say, on this knowledge. I love that you're basically saying, I'm not dispensing medical knowledge, but get THC into you. THCA, CBD, CBDA, CBA1s, activate your receptors. Can we talk quickly about a couple of things called terpenes? Do you know anything about that? And then we'll have to get ready to book you on another show.
Yeah, so I mean, terpenes are obviously amazing chemicals that are also found in the cannabis plant, but they're also found in lots of other plants, like citrus plants, for example, or lavender, right? We've heard of the terpene called linalool. That's that lavender smell. It also has anti-anxiety and anti-seizure effects and a whole bunch of things. So, like, all these terpenes are just as powerful and amazing as the cannabinoids. I mean, the terpenes, for example, aren't going to be that hammer to cancer cells that THC are, but many of them have anti-cancer activities. And in fact, one of the things that I'm very much interested in trying to do formulations right now for cancer prevention is really working with some of these terpenes and figuring out if we have the right combination, can we in a patient that has the genetics for developing cancer, like you have like a 90% shot, chance of developing, say, breast cancer.
Right.
If a patient takes something like this cocktail basically for their whole life, can they freeze their cancer? So it never grows into a tumor. And so, these terpenes have amazing, amazing powers. So shoot me some questions.
Okay, well, we're just about done. And I just wanted to make sure people understand this because terpenes, all of these cannabinoids are so important. I'm just trying to disabuse people of the notion that the whole answer is CBD. It's not.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great part of an overall equation, but we're going to have to let you go. We're just about out of time. Dr. Michele Ross. She's a doctor of neurology, by the way, so she knows about how...
Neuroscience.
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 I'm sorry, neuroscience. You can get into trouble with that. But you're neuroscience and a very intelligent user of this substance. And before we let you go, here's something that you spoke about earlier, and I'd like to share this with people to get it out of their minds that this is such a panic. So if you're paranoid about, THC or getting high or thoughts or whatever it is that people get upset about when they're using it, you said there were things you could do to mitigate that if you're quote-unquote too high. I've heard smelling pepper, ground black pepper will actually, which is also a terpene, will ameliorate that. So what else can you suggest for folks? And then we'll get you also, start off by telling us where we can find you online, and then tell us a little bit about how not to be too high when you're afraid of being high. What can you do?
Sure. So you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Dr. Michele Ross, and that's Michelle with one L because my parents are from Jersey and didn't give me the extra L. But you can also find me on drmichelleross.com, and that will list my speaking engagements, my books, and all the updates on my nonprofit and wherever else I'm up to, including trying to legalize psilocybin or mushrooms in Denver.
Right.
So I am all over the map. But And then, in terms of not getting too high or bringing down your high, which is something that I am very passionate about because I told you I have a low tolerance and people love to get the scientist high at parties. So I'm like, oh, this infused dinner has 200 milligrams. I can't do that and walk out of here. Okay. So actually, I keep capsules of a supplement called City Choline. It's like CITI and then choline, which is actually an amino acid. And so citicoline can be taken before you use cannabis or it can be taken after you use cannabis. And in fact, a lot of people that have to take high dosages in cancer, it's very powerful for bringing down that high within like 45 minutes. And a quite significant high, and I've tested it myself in situations like oh my god, I took 300 milligrams, and it's you still feel high, but you feel a little bit more control and like less groggy in case THC makes you feel very sleepy. So you can still function on it, whereas like you still know you're high, but so we'll never get rid of that, but it will make you it'll improve your cognitive abilities. And so actually citicoline is used for Alzheimer patients and other patients. I don't know whether it's available OTC in Canada. I believe it is. It's available OTC in the US. So it's something you can find on Amazon. So citicoline.
Okay, well, thanks for that. I know people would like to have that in their back pocket or in their breast pocket or whatever they're carrying around. So thank you so much for coming on the show, Dr. Michele Ross, and we hope that we can talk with you again. And I want to spend a little time talking about the psilocybin mushroom angle, because as soon as this show is over and cannabis is legal and everybody's using it, I'm going to be moving on to that topic myself.
Well, very cool. It's very helpful for cancer patients and anyone that's dealing with the trauma of being a chronically ill patient. I mean, being prodded and pricked and being told that you might die is traumatic. It's as traumatic as assault or suffering through a terrorist attack. And so this trauma, I mean, we're all traumatized, and I think everyone, just as we can benefit from a little bit of cannabis, could also benefit from a little bit of a magic mushroom experience. We'll start testing that out and seeing how that works on a legal level in Denver, hopefully in 2018.
Well, if you need any Canadian volunteers about that, you will definitely be in touch with me. Thanks so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. You've been wonderful.
Well, thank you so much, Alan. Have a great day.
You too. Thanks very much. Everybody, that was Dr. Michele Ross. Isn't she something? She's a reality star. We got a reality star in the White House. Now we've got one who has neuroscience experience on why this stuff is so great. And now we're going to move into a couple more pieces of information before we carry on with the closing of the show. And I'm sure that my producer / engineer Russell will be thrilled to hear that we are moving into the end of the show. Russell has to get going. So I was trying to wrap this up as quickly as possible. Russell, we're going to just give me a few more minutes here. Gosh, we got some things we got to do. We got to talk about. Before we get to too much more news, Dr. Ross also mentioned Israel. Let's bring this story up. This is fantastic. Benjamin, the leader there, Netanyahu blocks exports of medical marijuana and is ordering new studies. Despite broad support among government ministries, the Prime Minister ordered the Health Ministry and the National Economic Council chairman to review the issue. All right, so the issue being that he has suspended reforms aimed at allowing Israeli marijuana growers to export their product, pending new reviews by the Health Ministry and the chairman of the National Economic Council, in Israel, of course. NEC Chairman Avi Simon, Simhon, was instructed to conduct an economic feasibility study. The Health Ministry is to prepare a separate review. And it's funny to me that a lot of the money that Israel gets is from America, and America doesn't want cannabis happening. Ask that little fool Jeff Sessions all about it. He doesn't want it coming in, but meanwhile, they're pumping money into Israel to figure out they need to do more studies before they can sell their product. But boy, oh boy, Israel is definitely way ahead on cannabis research, and we thank them for it. And one day, I've got a bit of a fantasy that we will have some of those researchers, and in particular, the fantastic ancient researcher. He's in his 90s. I've already talked about him on the show, so I'm going to leave it alone. Turns out, what's this? Some bees or something going in the studio. I don't know what's happening at the moment. What's going on? Is this your thing? No. This is the flight of the bumblebee. What's that doing here? Oh, here we go. How about this stuff called Manuka honey? It's a type of raw honey that kills every kind of bacteria scientists could throw at it. Every kind? Well, I don't know about that, but let's read this. From Nick Meyer. It says the benefits of raw, unprocessed honey are well known, but in Australia, scientists recently made a startling discovery that one particular obscure type of honey, called Manuka, is capable of killing just about everything scientists throw at it, including some of the worst bacteria known to man. The findings were published in the European Journal of Clinical Microbiology and Infectious Diseases. I'm actually a subscriber. That's the June 2009 edition. And it could hold special significance at a time when many of the world's top antibiotics are failing, especially against resistant superbugs. The honey in question, produced in New Zealand, also goes by the name of jellybush honey. The honey has become so popular in the past few years that shortages have been reported and fake products are being sold, leading New Zealand Manuka producers to seek trademark protection. Oh, thank you very much. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Yes, we always get excited about trademark. That's enough of that. Trademark stuff. I lost my page there. Here we go. So Manuka honey is created by bees foraging on the nectar of the Leptospermum scoparium, which is the New Zealand Manuka bush, as well as tea trees native only to Australia and New Zealand. And why is this a big deal? I just thought that was a pretty fantastic lead-in to this story in the ScienceExplorer.com that says a beekeeper has trained bees to make honey from cannabis resin. Okay, it's all coming together now. Many people are calling the man who trained bees to make honey from marijuana a genius. I would like to add my name to that list. It is something many have talked about doing, but no one has been able to successfully pull it off. Until now, of course. His name is Nicholas Trainer, nicknamed Nicholas Trainer Bees, a 39-year-old who lives in France. He's probably 41 or 2 now. In addition to being a beekeeper, an artist, and a locksmith, he's also an outspoken supporter of marijuana. It's good to be an outspoken supporter of marijuana and be a locksmith. They do go hand in hand. When Trainer was just 7 years old, he began to get into a lot of trouble at school because he was hyperactive, which eventually led him to dropping out. Soon after leaving school, he realized that using cannabis for medical purposes helped him deal with his condition. He began consuming it before the age of 10, and his brain's okay. The government doesn't want you to regenerate your brain cells. Anyway, years later, many people who were afraid of Trainer's ability to raise and train bees began to ask if he would ever use his bees to create honey made from marijuana plants. Knowing that honey is a natural substance with its own health benefits, Trainer figured that the two would be perfect together. Hopefully, we can get this guy on the show, and hopefully he is making some kind of fantastic product from Manuka honey. Let's put both of those things together. And I'm going to read one quick thing from the 1947 medical cannabis study cover-up. Turns out, here's an article from 1949. It says a marijuana leaf plays an epilepsy cure role. That's from the Bureau of Narcotics Files, National Archives in College Park, Maryland. It says that the isolated principles from the leaves of marijuana, an innocent-looking plant that grows wild in different parts of the world, are playing an important role in research on a cure for epilepsy. This is the same marijuana that so many people fear as a habit-forming drug and which is noted for the opium-like dreams it produces in those who partake of it. The drugs are being used are synthetic substances related to cannabinol, which is contained in marijuana but does not produce the same effects. Dr. Gene P. Davis, faculty researcher at University of Utah Medical College, has done considerable research with the drugs in treatment of minor and convulsive epilepsy. Once again, I'd like to say that is a fantastic amount. She says that the drugs have been found effective 50% of the time. The future for epileptics appear very bright, she said, because of not only one new drug, but a whole field of new compounds to combat epileptic seizures. Hooray! 1949. Getting a little sick and tired of the repression of fact. The government keeping it in with no medical promise, and here it is, going to be curing epilepsy at a 50% rate, and they're telling us this before it was even 1950. The hell's going on out here? These governments that don't want us to reproduce our brain cells, they don't want us to improve our lot in life from a horrible disease such as cancer and many others. 50% of the time, huh? That's a hell of a lot better than the crappy flu shot, which so many people are taking and so many people are failing from anyway. So that's pretty much the end of our show right now. I have to say thank you to Kim Sakamoto and Danny Mendlow, and of course our guest, Dr. Michele Ross. And we're going to be coming back next week with another fantastic guest and so on and so forth, because there are people out there that do talk about these things and are aware of using this easy to grow and maintain substance that's available on the planet. And it's available in your backyard, and just take as many as you want. Don't listen to the laws. I mean, pay attention to them, understand how to protect yourself. But this is all a big ruse that we're not supposed to use this stuff. I'm all sick and tired of it. I'm all done listening to the naysayers. We're way deep onto this show. This is episode 28 of Green Crush. It's episode 100 of Conspiracy Queries. And those bees are buzzing around now. I feel like I want to eat some honey. So I'd like to thank you very much for listening. I'd like to thank Truth Seeker app for continuing to keep our show on their app, truthseekerapp.com, rounding it all up and giving it to you, the news you need to know, all in one crazy little app. So thanks very much for listening, and we will be back next week. Here comes the closing theme. Download this thing and send it to your mom. She probably needs to know about cannabis use, because she might have a bit of a problem there. She might be suffering from, as so many of us are, a cannabinoid deficiency. Yeah, not a fun thing to have. Let's kill the bees. Maybe I shouldn't have killed the bees. I'll definitely be raising my fist. Thanks for listening to Green Crush Conspiracy Queries with Alan Park on the Information You Need to Know Network. Thanks a lot to the Eggplant Digital Media. Thanks a lot to the Pacific Junction Hotel, so kind to host us in here weekly for your pleasure and information. Have a great afternoon.
Announcing CBGTV's Bud Break book. Get your copy now. Detailed strain reviews. Every purchase supports the ongoing efforts of CBGTV. Available from Amazon and at cbgtv.com, or scan the QR code.
Hi, I'm Timmy.
And I'm Mary Jane. He's the newbie.
She's the doobie. And this is the show
where we
tote
cannabis.
Talk.
From both sides.
Is that even possible?
Cannabis Broadcasting Group here at cbgtv.com.